Hello, I'm Emma Howard and we're talking about breastfeeding here on the Baby Channel, and with me is Heather Welford, who's a breastfeeding counsellor from the NCT, and sitting next to you we've got Philippa with 5.5-month-old Toby. Oh, he's a proper little boy, isn't he? Now, he's your fourth baby.
He is, yeah.
And you've breastfed all of them.
I have, yeah.
You've got a particular problem. Well, I say problem, you're at a particular stage with Toby.
That's right.
So tell us where you're at.
Well, I've been breastfeeding Toby for 5.5 months, like you said, and I'm now wanting to start him on solids. Originally, the government advice was sort of 4 to 6 months, and now they say nearer 6 months. So it's the time. He's also not sleeping so well, so I think it is the time.
So he needs more bulk in him, yes.
And he's quite big and chunky. And I just really have forgotten everything, even though I've had 3 children before. I've forgotten how to start weaning, and I was saying to Heather just before we came on air, I can't remember if I should give him boiled water and all these kind of things. So I thought it would be really nice to come today and ask Heather for some advice.
Well, it's really refreshing to hear you say you've forgotten, because we all do. People don't think we do. You've got 3 children before him. It's expected you'd know, but it's so easy to forget those early days, isn't it, Heather?
Yeah, it's easy as well to think it's going to be very complicated, and I'm going to tell Philippa that it's maybe not as complicated as she needs to worry about.
So where does she go from here?
Well, it's great that Toby is grown so gorgeous and chunky. Isn't he chunky? And that's all
He
mum's
is
milk,
lovely.
is that right,
Yes,
Philippa? Yeah.
Totally
So
breastfed.
there's absolutely no rush for solids, as you say. The current advice is to exclusively breastfeed to 6 months, and thereafter start thinking about introducing solids alongside the breast milk. Not every baby is going to fit that particular pattern. Some babies will need solids a little bit sooner. Other babies will go very slowly after 6 months, and there's no need to think that just because the calendar says your baby is now 6 months old, he's got to be doing this.
You look at signs that your baby is giving you, don't you?
Yes.
I mean, it's quite a significant sign, isn't it, that Toby's waking up in the night. That's a sign for his mum, isn't it?
Well, it could be, but I don't want to give Philippa any false hopes. You know, he may still continue to wake. Babies at this age aren't particularly waking because they're hungry in the night, and the research does show that solids doesn't make a difference overall. Some babies will coincidentally start to change their sleeping pattern, but it's probably not because of the solids.
Not what you want to hear, but you're hoping.
Fingers crossed it might make a difference for him.
I was quite interested in that, actually, because I have read that, of course, fruit and vegetables has got less calories than breast milk. So I couldn't quite understand how people do think solids makes babies sleep, but I suppose does it take longer to digest the food? Is that
not really? And you're right about the calorie content of breast milk. Is a meal of breast milk is going to have more calories in it than a meal of the fruit and veg purees that we tend to start babies on.
And that's because the body is producing exactly what the baby needs. The breast milk has everything.
The breast, we know that babies can be perfectly well nourished.
Okay,
He's
feed
all
him,
this talk is making me
well, let's feed him. I mean, you're at a very experienced stage.
Look at that, just straight on. I'll have that, Mum. Thank you very much. That was what I was agitating for.
I know in other items we'll talk about how when you're just beginning at this stage, I can imagine a mum with a newborn watching you is thinking, how does she do that so easily?
But even though he's my 4th, I still, in the first few days, have this kind of, you know, a newborn baby is quite difficult to manoeuvre, never mind have to manoeuvre them in this position and think about, concentrate very difficult.
It's tough in the beginning,
It's very difficult, even with my 4th. And you know, after 2 or 3 weeks, suddenly it becomes very natural and you seem to be able to do it wherever you are and however you are. Answer the phone, put the kettle on, you know, look after my other children, walk around, you know, it becomes very natural. But the first couple of days, I still found I had to really try and remember very hard the positioning and how to sit comfortably. And
sorry, Toby, we're distracting
you.
We are distracting, Toby, isn't it? The baby has to learn too, you were saying to me earlier.
That's right.
People don't ever think that that's the case.
I know, there's an idea around that mothers and babies will just know how to do it. But although there's a lot of instincts that support breastfeeding, like the baby can suck and swallow, he more or less knows where it comes from and will react when the breast is given to him. The refinements of positioning and attachment, they're a learnt process for mother and baby. Each mother and baby are unique. So a mother who has had a brilliantly easy time with baby number 1 may find that she needs to concentrate a little bit more on getting her act together with baby number 2. But your experience, Philippa, is fairly typical, that in the early days and weeks, things need a little bit more concentration, a little bit more attention to detail, and then as the baby learns and you learn, it becomes much easier.
Which is clearly where you are here with your fourth. So you've got this bonny big boy, 5.5 months.
Yes.
And do you recommend that Philippa should start with something like baby rice? Is that the first food you always wean with, or is it different for different people?
It's the great thing about the current advice, which is that the maximum health benefits come with exclusive breastfeeding to 6 months, is that you don't need to be worried so much about purees or starting off on one thing rather than another.
Advantage.
It's more convenient. So you've got a baby who might be able to chew a little bit more. Some babies have got teeth. I think Toby has.
He's just getting a tooth.
He's getting a tooth. So you don't have to have everything pureed down to sort of slop consistency. He'll be able to put some things in his mouth by himself. Oh, I know he'll get it all over his mouth and everything. But
we shouldn't be afraid of mess, though, should we? We're often,
absolutely not. No,
it's quite good for them to feel the texture of the food.
Yeah, that's right. It's part of learning about the world around them. And you'll probably find that when you do come to give him solids, you could give him, I don't know, a chunk of pear or apple, and he can probably have a little gnaw on that. And you don't need to be messing about with the fiddly bits. So as well as the health aspect, there's the convenience aspect. Waiting till about 6 months, not being in a rush, means that the actual process of giving solids becomes much easier, really.
Right, and I was going to ask actually, should I give him water? Because if you read a lot of baby books, there's a lot of conflicting information about whether or not
boiled water.
Yeah, and then other books say that breastfed babies don't need water, and I didn't know if because he was starting on solids he should have water because perhaps he'd be a bit more constipated. I don't know.
No, it's a very good point, isn't it?
Yes. No,
if he's continuing to breastfeed quite a lot alongside the solids, you'll find that the breast milk will supply him with all the fluids he needs. If you were leaving him for a day or so, or he was sort of skipping the usual breastfeeds that he has, he's going to need something. He's going to need some fluids, and you could give him some water at that stage. The current advice would probably be to give it cooled boiled water, but check with your health visitor because when a baby is starting to put all sorts of things into his mouth and sitting on the floor and getting various bits of family bacteria into his mouth at that stage, we don't need to be quite so concerned about the cooled boiledness of the water, but check with your health visitor to see what she says.
That's interesting, because I also didn't know if I should be sterilising the spoons and that kind of thing. I couldn't remember what I'd done before.
You don't need to bother doing that. Not at 6 months.
Right.
We'd be a little bit more concerned with perhaps a tiny baby, and you were, but you wouldn't be feeding a tiny baby solids. You can wash bowls and spoons perfectly safely. You don't need to sterilise them.
And would you say, Heather, that's one of the big advantages of waiting for 6 months until you start weaning the baby, that they can hold things, you can chunk up the food as opposed to the slop that you've talked about?
Yes.
Because at 4 months, I mean, those 2 months are really quite significant in a young baby's life.
That's right. There's a lot of developmental stuff goes on in those 2 months. Already Toby knows that, if he puts his hand in front of his face, he can get a good chew of his thumb. He's got those fine motor skills, really. Yes. He can hold things better than he could at 4 months. Have you found that? I mean, you can give him a bit of a rattle and he won't drop it immediately.
He chews everything at the moment,
So,
and also, I think another advantage is I can probably put him straight in a high chair rather than have to
he can
sit him in a little rocker and try and manage to feed him with a spoon or whatever.
So there are many reasons to persevere breastfeeding your baby until 6 months before you wean. But what about those parents who think that they've seen these signs? They've got the 4.5-month-old baby and the baby is following the spoons of the adults with food. I mean, some books say this is a sign your baby wants food like you do. What do you say to that?
That's fine. If you really think your baby would be interested in having something extra to chew on, then that's fine. I think what we're concerned about is babies getting solids really too early. Below 4.5 months is really too soon in terms of nutrition. The baby doesn't need the extra, and there's some research to show that if you do it too young, you're perhaps causing problems of intolerance and food
And
intolerance
allergies
later on.
could be set up.
Could be. But
yes, it's really important to not try
most babies, you know, if a baby is looking really keen, and some babies at 4.5 months are literally grabbing it off your plate. You know, they're interested in the taste and the texture. They don't actually need the extra calories.
And that should be encouraged, shouldn't it?
Yeah, that's fine. Eating is a social occasion, and a baby sitting on your lap with everybody else around the table, he sees a bit of banana. You know, you don't need to panic if he puts a bit of banana in his mouth. Not when he's that old.
And the only food that should really be avoided, the evil for young children, is anything with salt, isn't it? Salt is something that you just really should try and keep out.
Yes, babies' kidneys are not really fully developed enough to cope with extra salts in the diet until really they're quite a bit older. So you keep things salt-free unless the salt is naturally present in the food, like it might be in a bit of bread or something.
So where do the NCT stand on crisps then? Because you often see young babies, and younger even than Toby, with a crisp. And of course crisps have got salt on them. Some people think they're a great quick fix, keep the child happy, but anything with salt should be
crisps are not suitable for a young baby. They're too high in salt, they've got artificial flavourings, and I would worry about a baby biting a little bit off and actually choking on it. So not crisps, no.
But start with the breadsticks and the rice cakes well before you get on.
We can't say that there's anything nutritious really in crisps for a baby of this age.
No, to be avoided at all costs. It's just that they are that thing that you see often, and people are confused about the salt issue. Well, Philippa, by the looks of Toby, he's going to be absolutely fantastic eater, because he's a brilliant feeder and he's a big boy. He looks like he's waiting for the food that you're going to give him any moment now. Thank you very much for bringing him in to talk to us today, and thank you, Heather.